Well, good evening, everybody. I want to say that we did this video yesterday, and what happened was I don't know what actually happened. When you try to do this new technology, sometimes it just overcomes you and it wins, but we are going to continue. I'm going to come back to Facebook Live and do these weekly Empower 9 segments, and then I'll transfer it over to YouTube, and then we're going to continue to search for a much more proficient platform that we can do our weekly empowerment sessions on. So one of the things that was shared with me in our my sessions and my lessons in my comments was that people were asking, well, what is exactly Empower 9? And I'm going to explain that real quick, and then I'm going to go into my weekly pillar today. But Empower 9 is a holistic life alignment and performance system designed to help individuals, teams, and organizations operate at their highest level. Now, most people think, well, if I am doing well physically, mentally, and spiritually, I am doing well. Well, in reality, if you really dig into the development of human beings, most people say there's 5 pillars, but in reality, there are 9 pillars based on different societal evaluations, how people grew up, all of those particular things. And that's what my program and system really does. It addresses all 9 of those pillars. And so that's why we're going to do each week what the human development process really looks like. And so what I want to share with people is human development is just not about aging. It is formation. It is how you set yourself up to move through each phase of your life, through each new initiative, through loss, through anything that happens in your life. And so from birth to legacy, we move through predictable psychological and emotional construction phases. And so please don't confuse these constructional phases with the phases of trauma. Now, these phases are attachment. We learned that at a very early age. You see that if you have a young child, it's always hanging on to their mother. That's where we learn safety, trust, and belonging. That's the attachments phase. And then the second phase is the identity phase. As we get older, as we sort of migrate and sort of connect to the different places and the different people that we want to be connected to, we go into the identity phase when we ask, who am I? Who am I? What am I? What is my purpose? And so as we move through life, as we move through different relationships, as we move through different situations in our life, we always circle back to that question, ask, who am I? Our third one is our competence stage. And that's when we test our ability, our power, and our influence. That's where our intellect comes in. That's who our circle of friends come in, our circle of influence, the people we associate with. Because in most cases, we know that who we associate with, people also believe that we are that type of person. And our last one is integration. Who we attempt to align with and how we are is how we live. And so those are the psychological and emotional construction phases. And that's what we sort of address here at the Rory T. Edwards Group through our Empower 9 process. Because I wanted to explain it to you in layman terms as we move forward, because I want people to realize that this is something that is doable for everybody, because we're in a time right now where there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of what's tomorrow going to look like. You know, where am I going to be? And that can become confusing, and it can address and it can attack these pillars to make one pillar unstable. And so you have to understand what these triggers may have, well, how these triggers may happen. What is it going to trigger you to address a particular pillar and how they are aligned with keeping you aligned and balanced in your life. So every human begins to walk this road, but here's what we rarely talk about: survival versus developmental. Because many of us right now, no insult to anybody, many of us are in survival mode versus development mode. Now, I'll give you an example of what survival mode and development mode means. Survival mode means that you are on defense, right? You're on defense. You're always defending. You're always making sure that something doesn't get by you. But in development mode, you're on the offense. You're always learning. You're always going a step further. You're always enhancing who you are or what you are going to become. That's the difference between survival and development. And development doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens under pressure, right? So, and pressure introduces trauma. So when we talk about introducing trauma, that's where next week when we address a pillar, the next pillar, we will address those 4 stages of trauma. And so why does Empower 9 take it to another level? Most systems treat the symptom. In reality, most systems treat the fruit, whereas Empower 9 treats structural misalignment, which is the root, right? Instead of asking, how do we fix this problem, we ask, which pillar never fully developed? Because trauma disrupts pillars, and I'm going to announce the pillars in here too, but I'm going to tell you how it does it. Imprint trauma affects the emotional and relational pillar. Identity trauma disrupts the intellectual and social pillar. Performance trauma destabilizes the occupational and the financial pillar. And accentual trauma fractures the spiritual and the environmental pillar. Because Empower 9 doesn't isolate the trauma that you think you're going through. You know, you're having financial problems, but in reality, we can go back and do some just a few questions and find out that your initial trauma is really your intellectual pillar. But that's what it does. And Empower 9 doesn't isolate trauma. What we do is we rebuild the human system. So this week we're talking about the emotional pillar. And you're not emotional, you're carrying unprocessed load. It's like having extra stuff in your car, and when you get to your destination, half of it you don't need. You just were attached to it. You threw it in the car. You didn't want to leave it, but you know you really had no reason to even carry it. And that's what our emotions are. Our emotions are the things that drive us daily. It's our interactions with people. It's our interactions with anything that we encounter, and how we address it from our emotional standpoint is how we begin our day. And so when most people hear the word emotional, whether they say, oh, you're trying to say that I think I'm weak. No, it's not weakness. It's overreaction. It's instability. It's unaware of your interactions. It's not about the receiver. In most cases, it's about the sender. So when you send something to somebody, the way they react is the way that they thought you sent it. So emotionally, you got to be very conscious of how you send things, because when we live in a social media world, there's no emotions attached to most of our statements. So you can say one word and it's received on the other end as totally different. But let's talk about what that means, right? Emotions are signals, and they tell us what needs attention. That's what emotions are. Emotions align us and make us aware that something needs attention. So if you find yourself snapping at people every time somebody asks you a question, you have to find what the root of that is. And you need to be able to address that. And the emotional pillar exists because no human system, athlete, leader, parent, or professional can function well without emotional regulation. That's just a fact. No one can function well without emotional regulations. Now let me give you the novice explanation. What the emotional pillar governs. The emotional pillar governs how we process stress. See, people say, oh, I'm stressed out. See, stress is really the fruit of a much larger problem that was developed in the root. So, and we'll go forward and we'll talk about that as we move forward. It's also how you respond under pressure. That's what the emotional pillar governs, how you respond under pressure, right? If you you're driving on the highway and somebody cuts you off and you respond in a negative way, that's the emotional pillar that is actually making that statement. And why is it why do you respond that way? Those are things that are triggers that you need to see and understand and ask yourself. The third one is how we recover from disappointment. Now, disappointment can be in all different phases. Disappointment could be failure to get a job, failure to complete a task, loss of life, loss of a loved one, loss in a relationship, something that you thought you should be promoted for and didn't happen. That could be how you understand how you recover from disappointment, right? And the fourth one is how safe you feel inside yourself. Now, like I said, everything starts with you during the day. What do you do during the day to make sure that your day is going to be the most positive day that you're going to be, and nobody's going to zap your energy, because you're only going to allow people who have that same positive, uplifting energy in your cipher. So that's what happens. And if emotions don't have a place to go, they don't disappear, they accumulate. They build up. They build up to the next day. Emotions hang around until you release them. And sometimes we know there's people who get the emotional trauma from someone, and it's given to someone who has nothing to do with the situation, because it doesn't go away, it just accumulates, right? So, why it matters in this system. This pillar protects the others. When emotional loads build up, let me tell you what happens to your body. Your body tightens up, your thinking narrows, you don't understand, you react instead of act. Your relationships feel heavier, everybody is against you, nobody understands what you're saying, nobody supports you, nobody is patting you on the back telling you that you deserve more. It's because your emotionals have accumulated, and sometimes the way they come out, you may seem like you don't realize it, but other people do receive that stuff. And the third one, your work feels more draining, right? So that's what happened. People often say, I don't know why I reacted this way. That's not confusion, that's overflow. That's the accumulation that we spoke about a little bit earlier. So I'm going to end with this stabilizing action that you can do once you address this emotional pillar. Today isn't about fixing emotions, it's about acknowledging them. I want you to say this one thing when you feel that emotion building up. Say out loud, if you can, I've been carrying more than I have admitted. I've been carrying more than I admit. Right? And so once you understand that, you'll know that you're carrying something that doesn't belong in your cipher. And so instead of not addressing it, what you do, you let it sit in your spirit, and it accumulates and it grows. Right? There's no explanation needed for that. That's what happens. Right? So in closing, I want to say this. You're not emotional, you're human, with a system that needs a release mechanism. And that release mechanism is something that we can help you develop and create for the rest of your life here at the Rory T. Edwards Group. So we have a new email that if you need to speak to us to set up some type of consultation, please do that. It's Rory T. Edwards Group.info@gmail.com. It's Rory T. Edwards Group.info@gmail.com. A lot of you don't want to admit that you're going through some emotional stress right now. Please let us help you. And if you don't think that we can help you, I know you have a friend that you can refer us to that we can help. We definitely want to make sure that everybody is the best person, is creating the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. So until next time, this is House Calls with your man, Dr. Rory T. Edwards. I appreciate you listening, and we are going to continue to service you every week. So just because I did it today, it's because we had a malfunction yesterday, and I want to make sure I'm committed to my commitment is to you to make sure I get these 9 pillars and what their activity is about. So until we talk, you all be well. Ashe.